Alright, so in this video we're going to be covering both the multiplication and the division property of equality, because multiplication and division are very, very similar. When you think about division, you're basically multiplying a fraction, essentially. So like, for example, 2 divided by 5 is basically equal to 2 times 1/5, right? Which is exactly like, this is basically multiplication of a fraction. So you can think about multiplication as something that does not or division rather, that something that does not exist but is created. And the same thing with subtraction, really, because if we think about addition, a plus b, and if we have a minus b can be rewritten as a plus minus b, a plus negative b. So this is still addition. So again, subtraction and division, they're stuff that we kind of created, that we call subtraction, division, but they're basically just multiplication and addition, respectively, in a different form. Anyway, the video is not going to be about this. The video is about the multiplication property of equality and the division property of equality. So let's say that we had a equaling to b, and this is going to be the multiplication property. So this is the multiplication property. So the multiplication property says that if we multiply by some number c to both sides of this equation, and c is going to be the same number on both sides, then we will have an equivalent equation. So both of these are going to be equivalent. Now, there's a condition though. C cannot be equal to 0. If c is equal to 0, we would actually have 0 equals 0 regardless, right? Because c is 0, and anything multiplied by 0 is just always going to be 0. Even if it's an expression, whatever it is, if it's multiplied by 0, it's just 0. So that's not going to be true anymore. It's not going to be equivalent to this anymore, because we can't just simply divide out a factor and just produce an equivalent equation. So they're not going to be equivalent. So c cannot be equal to 0. So let's look at an example in where you'd use this in solving a problem, for example. So let's say that we had c divided by 4 is equal to, let's do a small number, 5. How would you solve this? Well, this is basically, as I said before, 1/4 times c is equal to 5. In order to get rid of this 1/4, what can we do? Well, we can multiply 4. That's the smartest thing to do, because in order to isolate the c, this would work out, because the 4's would cancel, and we'd have 1 times c, which is just equal to c, and then 5 times 4, of course, is supposed to be 20. So this is your answer, and we use the property of multiplication property of equality in this case. Now let's jump into the division property of equality. The division property of equality is very similar, has very similar conditions. So again, if we think about a equaling b, if we divide by a value c to both sides, basically multiply by 1 over c, this is going to be equivalent to b divided by c. Now, you might be knowing what the condition is going to be, because I told you that both of these are similar. So the condition is going to be, so these two are equivalent, unless c is equal to 0. Why is that the case? Because you can't divide by 0. That's going to produce a result. That's going to be undefined. It's not going to be something that you can do. So c cannot be equal to 0. That's what I meant to say. C cannot be equal to 0. That's a condition that we're going to have. In calculus, when you take calculus, you're gonna see this occur, this kind of thing occur, where you're gonna be thinking about dividing by 0, but really you can't do that because dividing by 0 is undefined. However, if the you can see what would happen as the denominator approaches 0. We would have the overall value getting larger and larger, approaching infinity, essentially. But that's not the topic of this video. Anyway, if we were to look at an example, for example, let's say that we had a multiplied by 5. I should just write that as 5a. So 5a is equal to 25. We can get rid of this 5. We can isolate the a, essentially, by multiplying by 1 over 5. Multiplication, 1 over 5. And so this would cancel. this would be now just a times 1, which is just equal to a. 25 over 5 is what? Well, that's just going to be 5. 5 is your answer. So a is equal to 5 in this case. Okay, so that's the multiplication and the division property of equality in this video. I hope you found this video helpful.